Hello student, I am Professor Devashish Bose, Head Department of Criminology and Forensic Science, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. I am going to present a lecture of BSc first semester on the unit Introduction to Forensic Science, which has been jointly prepared by myself and Mr. Giriraj Sharma, a PhD scholar and a UGC JRF at Department of Criminology and Forensic Science, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. Let's start our discussion while taking a look at what we are going to learn today. In today, Module 1 will deal about Introduction of Forensic Science Principle. Module 2 will be Law of Exchange. Module 3 will deal about Principle of Individuality. Module 4 will be Law of Comparison. Module 5 Principle of Linkage. Module 6 Law of Probability. Module 7 will be Law of Progressive Change, Module 8 Law of Analysis, and finally will be our Module 9, that is Conclusion. Dear student, today we shall learn about another beautiful topic, that is Principles of Forensic Science. As we know that these are the principles that make the footing of any subject, or we can say these gives a particular dimension to the subject. Moreover, each and every subject has its own principle like forensic science. In addition to this, chemistry, physics and biology have their own basic principle that are connected to each other. Here in forensic science, we have borrowed some principles from other disciplines also. So let's start with the principle of forensic science. For the sake of convenience, we will be studying them one by one. Therefore, before beginning them, I would like to make you familiar with them, such as principle of exchange, principle of individuality, law of comparison, principle of linkage, law of circumstantial facts, law of probability, law of progressive change, and finally law of analysis. Dear student, now we are going to discuss the principle of exchange. So let's have a definition of principle of exchange that was given by Sir Edmund Locard. Every contact leaves traces. This is what he said. Or in simple word, he said, when two objects come in contact with each other, a cross transfer of material occurs. So my dear student, he strongly believed that every perpetrator can be connected to a crime scene or crime by their footprint, fingerprint, hair, clothes fiber, or even dust particle, all soil carried at the crime scene or brought from the crime scene. Therefore, let's apply the principle on crime scene. How does it work? According to this principle, when a perpetrator and or his or her instrument of crime touches or comes in contact with the object at the scene or the victim, then they leave the trace. So, in the essence of the principle, we can say this is the natural process that happens. Principle of individuality has great relevance in forensic science, as we know that everything is unique in nature. Even nature does not produce duplicate the living things. Now, you will be remembering the case of monozygotic twins. They look exactly alike, but somewhere they are different from each other. Even when you will see the leaves of a same branch at plant, you will find the difference between them. So, this is the individuality of the nature. But you will be thinking that what about those things which has been built and made by human being? My dear student, these things are also unique in nature. Let's take the example. Have you seen the coin, currency notes or firearms? All the coins of the same denomination in the same mint look exactly alike, but they are different from each other. During the time of manufacturing, they get the individuality that are not easy to observe or understand, but when you will see them with high concentration you will seek the difference. One more interesting example is of a firearm. They are similar to each other. While firearms are being created in the same factory with same batch by the same machine or at the same time and by the same worker, they are different. Now they are different to each other in their class characteristics as well as individual characteristics. Dear student, when we talk about in the context of forensic science, there are many examples that show the individual characters. You can take the example of the fingerprint. Still, there is no single case being reported throughout the world which shows the same fingerprint even in case of monozygotic twins where they have the similar DNA but they have different fingerprints. So this is the quality of fingerprint. Moreover, like fingerprint, there is also other evidences that illustrate their individual characteristics. So we will have a definition of the principle of individuality. Every object, natural or man-made, has an individuality which is not duplicated in any other object. It is unique. Neither the nature has duplicated itself nor man can. This definition has been taken from the book Forensic Science in Criminal Investigation and Trial, Universal Law Publishing Company, written by B.R. Sharma. In the last, the essence of the principle is that everything is individual in itself. For example, physical evidence is unique, crime scene is unique, modus operandi is unique, and different people have different mind makeup. So everything is unique by itself. My dear student, after looking at both law, now we go to another important law, that is law of comparison. As we know very well, only similar things can be compared with similar. For example, gold can be compared with gold, not with silver. So this is the principle of comparison that explains that different things cannot be compared to each other while only similar. Currently, you will be thinking this, how it is possible. So let's take an example. Suppose you received exhibit for the comparison. After opening it, you found that both were different objects, such as one is hair and another is fiber. As we know that both are different from each other in every aspect, such as appearance, morphology, texture, shape, size, color, chemical components and biological characters. So this is the principle of comparison that emphasizes that is necessary of providing like exhibits for comparison with the suspected one. Now we will have a definition of the principle. According to this principle, only the same exhibits must be compared with the same. Here I would like to give another interesting example. Suppose that in a burglary case, glass is recovered from the crime scene as an exhibit. Forensic science experts opine that the glass has been from the window of a glass frame. So it is useless to send vehicle glass such as car plane, truck window glass, etc. One more example is that if an investigating officer gets human blood at the crime scene and then he sends an animal blood, it won't be a futile experiment. Forensic experts cannot reveal the truth, or the most important thing is that both exhibits are different from each other. One was human blood, another was animal. So here the principle of comparison is applied with all the physical evidences. In the essence of the principle, we can say this is the duty of the investigating officer to recognize physical evidence in a proper way and then to send it to the forensic science laboratory. My dear student, now we will discuss the principle of linkage. As we all are familiar with the beautiful proverb, people lie, evidence never. So here, according to this principle, if investigating officers gets the physical evidence at the crime scene, one can easily link it to suspect and a victim. On the basis of physical evidence, there can be two types of linkages, direct linkage and indirect linkage. Apart from suspect or victim, linkages is also linked to suspect to the crime scene, suspect with the physical evidence. We can understand this with the help of a figure that is depicted below. Figure: linkage between the elements of the crime. Here in this figure we can see the relation between the different elements of crime, how they are related to each other. For more clearance, let me put an example that will remove out the doubts from the fact. Suppose that if one commits crime or one leaves their identity card at a scene of crime, after some time the investigating officer asks the suspect, "Where were you? You were present while committing the crime." Definitely, one will say that he was out of the town or he was not there. Investigating officer will inquire about the identity card obtained from the scene of crime. As we know that this identity card linkage the suspect with the crime scene. The question that arises here, how the identity card reached the scene of crime if the suspect was out of city or out of that place on that particular day. So, my dear student, there are many examples that links the physical evidence with the crime scene, victim, object and the suspect. These things also link themselves to each other. Let me give another example. You can take the example of fingerprint. Fingerprint are the most valuable and trustable physical evidence that directly links the suspect with the crime scene. Without any doubt, one more thing is that I want to explain you, that is, with the advent of new laboratory techniques now commonly being used in forensic science laboratories, like toxicological evidence such as viscera, plant poison, animal poison and chemical poison can be used direct link of person to the crime scene. Moreover, you can take the example of biological evidence such as blood, semen or saliva that can be used for direct linking of suspect to the crime as well as crime scene. In these examples, we have discussed the direct linkage of perpetrator with the crime scene. But there are also physical evidences that provide indirect link to the suspect with the crime scene, like footwear impression, tire tread mark, tool marks. Module 6, Law of Probability. Dear students, now we are going to talk about law of probability. You might have heard this term in your previous classes, or you might be familiar with the term probability. Here, we will study how probability is used in the field of forensic science to punish or to bring to book the perpetrator on the basis of physical evidences. Moreover, this is just like a common simple example. If a gang of robbers robbed a bank, now the investigating officer has to put the probability which one gang has done it. On the other hand, forensic scientists will also make the use of probability with the physical evidence, like if the forensic scientist receives a blood and other biological fluid as physical evidence, then what will be the probability of a blood that it belongs to a person or not? In addition to this, it might be 90%, 95%, 99% or maybe even 100%. Here we are noticing one thing that is varying according to physical evidence. It will vary because different evidence are different in nature. Probability is a mathematical concept. Now we are going to define the term probability. It determines the chances of occurrence of a particular event in a particular way out of a number of ways in which the event can take place or fail to take place with the equal facility. This definition is again taken by the book Forensic Science in Criminal Investigation and Trials by Universal Law Publication, written by B.R. Sharma. Dear student, we will not discuss the mathematical portion of probability. My dear student, now we will be discussing the law of progressive change. As we know that everything changes with passage of time, or in other words, we can say that nothing is permanent until or unless one day it will change from one form to the other. Here I would like to give an example. Even you can take your own example. Our journey starts from our ancestors, and in the end it changed to a magnificent human being. Indeed, in other applies to other things also. Moreover, we talk about the context of crime. One commits the crime, so and so perpetrator uses such and such instrument for committing a crime. These instrumental work as a physical evidence. On the other hand, these evidence will also change their nature. If these evidences are not recognized, preserved or forwarded to a forensic science laboratory at a right time, they would be spoiled before being analyzed and give a false result to the investigating officer. Indeed, it will ruin out the whole investigation. So, there is a dire need for the investigating officer to recognize and preserve the physical evidence as soon as possible. In the above, we have taken our own examples in the context of progressive change. It also applies on the perpetrator because if one commits a crime today, after passage of some day, you cannot book the person. Why? Because the face and the body texture of the criminal would be changed, or he will change his image. So, it would be difficult to identify that person. So, this is the principle of progressive change that applies on every physical evidence as well as human being. My dear student, now we are going to discuss the law of analysis, that is the most important form of the investigating point of view. As we know that by analyzing the physical evidence, forensic scientist opines his report regarding the analysis of physical evidences. After committing the crime, perpetrator leaves the physical evidences at the crime scene. Now, the investigating officer would recognize and preserve them for the analysis and send them to a forensic science laboratory. Here, the investigating officer has to use his own conscience while treating with the physical evidence, otherwise improper sampling and contamination render the best analysis useless. Let me give an example to clear this talk. Suppose that an investigating officer gets a blood or any biological fluid at the crime scene. If one collects and preserves the exhibit with his naked or blind hand and without taking other precaution, definitely the results would be disrupted and disputed. So, we can say this principle emphasizes the necessity of correct sampling and packing of physical evidences. So now we will have the definition of the principle. The analysis can be no better than the sample analyzed. This is again taken from the book Forensic Science in Criminal Investigation and Trial by Universal Law Publishing Company, written by B.R. Sharma. So, this is our finish of the lecture, and my dear student, now we are going to conclude this lecture. As we know that principle of forensic science laid the foundation of this subject. Moreover, these principles are the soul of the subject. These principles teaches us how to treat the physical evidences, and also if you are going on the right directions, it means you are doing everything right, you will have the best result. Otherwise, if you are wrong, the results will be wrong. After studying this lecture, my dear students, you will know the principle of forensic science and how these principles led the crime scene. As we have seen in the principle of exchange that stated every contact leaves traces. It depends on the skill, expertise and knowledge of the investigating officer to identify them. Moreover, like this principle, other principle also works in the same manner as example law of analysis. If you are given a good sample, indeed you will have the best results. In the last, we can say that all the principles work together. With all this information, here we come to the end of today's lecture. Do keep in mind what we have discussed today. It's time for you all to do some self-study. This is Professor Devashish Bose signing off. If you want to learn more and enhance your knowledge, you may log on to our website for MCQs, quizzes and LORs at www.cec.nic.in. Till then, thank you and goodbye.